Hello, my friends. This is Luis Lima, directly from Central Florida, and welcome once again to Spiritism, a closer look on Kardec Radio. By the way, I invite you to go to our website, kardecradio.com, and check out the grid. There are so many different programs and so many interesting things at different levels and possibilities. So don't miss any of them. Just check it out. Go to kardecradio.com and check it out. Well, welcome again, once again, to Spiritism, a closer look, evolution. This is our program number 7. Yeah, it's going fast. It's number 7. Okay, so of course, we always invite you to participate with us on our weekly trivia. And you can go to this website. You have it under your screen, evolution.spirittrivia.com. At the end of each meeting, each transmission, we put a link where you can cast your answer on a Spiritist question related to the subject that we just covered. And we also, every beginning of the program, we go back to the last program and see what happened on our Spirit Trivia. So let's check it out. So last week, we discussed vital principle. Right? Vital principle was a topic for last week. There were a lot of details, a lot of things that we brought and discussed, and that there's more to be discussed. We're going to go through this in small parts as we go along. Anyhow, this is the question that we posted last week. Which of the following best describes the vital principle? Okay. All of the participants responded the same thing. They all casted answer A, which is it's a force that causes the animalization of matter. And that's exactly what it is. It's a force. It's not it's not matter, it's not intelligence, it is just a force, okay, that causes the animalization of matter. We understand animalization of matter as something that becomes organic. Inorganic matter becomes organic. We explained that last week in detail, so that would be the correct answer. If you want to get more references on it, you can find a lot of references on a lot of details actually on the vital principle on 2 of Allan Kardec's books, the Spirit's book. He talks about it in the introduction and also in chapter 4. He goes at length with several questions lined up in reference. And you can also go to the Genesis book, chapter 10. He also addresses a lot about the vital principle. So now that we are intersecting inert matter with life, and that's what the vital principle, that's where it comes in place, we are going to go to the next topic. Last week, we discussed the appearance of life through the vital principle. Now today we are going to discuss the appearance of life on Earth, because the planet had no living beings at a certain point, and then living beings came to be. So there's obviously a huge evolutionary path and transitions all over the place, so things like this can happen. And that's what we wanted to cover today. So we are going to talk about the Earth, formation of the Earth and everything else. We are going to base our line of thought in something that science believes is what happened. Okay, it comes from different branches of science, different people. It's the most, I would say, accepted theory for how the Earth came about. And it all starts with something that became very popular, and we call it the Big Bang. Well, what is the Big Bang? Big Bang is something that would have happened about 16 million years ago, 16 billion years ago, and things were occurring, things were changing, and we got to planets and the universe. I'm going to go in details, but think about this, for example. If I tell you that the Big Bang took place 20 billion years ago, most people would say, yeah, that's all right, okay. You kind of just accept it, 20 billion years, yeah. You know, right after that, I will tell you, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It's not 20 billion years, it's 40 billion years. Most people will say, oh, okay, all right, that's fine. Good thing you corrected. But think about it. From 20 billion years to 40 billion years, it's 100% of error. It's completely off the charts. One of them is off the charts if you come to think of it. And we don't really, our brain does not administer those numbers well because they're too big. They're out of, if they were out of sight, we can't really bring that at the conscious level of our brain. So trying to explain the universe, formation of Earth and Sun and solar system using the absolute numbers is complicated because, even dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Okay, and if I tell you, I'm sorry, it's not 65 million, it's 100 million, you're still okay with that. But look at the difference. So in order to explain all these, these billion years, we're going to use a technique. It's used by astronomers to explain to, the general population how the thing came about. So we are going to convert. Actually, the Big Bang, we spoke so much about it, right? The Big Bang took place 16.4 billion years ago. Okay, so 16.4 billion years ago, that would be the general accepted number, so we think it's the right number. Anyhow, from that day to the present time, to the present moment you're listening to me right now, okay, we are going to convert all these 16.4 billion years in 1 year, 365 days. Because if you come to think of it, 1 year is something that we can easily, I would say, administer. If I ask you, hey, what did you do last year? What were you doing last year, let's say in April or May? You might have to think for a couple of seconds or so, but you will be able to tell me because it's something, 1 year is not bad. 16.4 billion years is different. So we are going to convert the entire amount of time, 16.4 billion years in 1 year, in such a way that January 1st, our zero, is going to be the Big Bang. And now, you listening to me right now, right this second, wherever you are, doesn't matter. The now moment is December 31st, midnight. So that is a full year, 365, 366 days. Okay, so let's see how things were happening until we got the universe in place, the solar system in place. So it all starts here, January 1st, with the Big Bang. Nothing really important, if you will, or at least to the extent that it matters to us here, nothing really important took place until May 1st. That's a lot, right? That's more than a quarter. A quarter of the year is gone and nothing really happened. On May 1st, the equivalent to May 1st, we would see the formation of the first galaxies. Formation of something is not something ready. Okay, that has to be clear. So formation of the first galaxies is particles are kind of grouping themselves. And, there's a bunch of particles going that way, another bunch of particles going this way. Something is going to happen. That's what we call formation of first galaxies. And the next important thing, the next big thing, doesn't happen until September 1st. That's more than half of the year. It's almost 3/4 of the year is gone. And nothing in quotes, right? Nothing happens. September 1st, solar stability. What is solar stability? The surface of the sun, with the agglomeration of matter and particles and everything else, went through a lot of explosions and a lot of chemical reactions. These explosions are calming down. So there's stability now. Things are getting more stable. That's what we call solar stability. Of course, the sun still has all the explosions and everything, but to a point where, for example, before the solar stability, if you think about it, we wouldn't be able to look up in the sky and say, oh, that's the sun, because it would be so scattered. We wouldn't have the idea of a conglomerate of matter forming what we see as a ball. or a sphere. Okay, so September 1st, solar stability. The next big thing is right here on September 10th, beginnings of the Earth. Well, what is beginnings of the Earth? It's the same as formation of the galaxies, There's a lot of particles agglomerating, they're going in that direction. Something is going to happen in there. That something will be the Earth one day. So it's the very early stages of particles getting bonded together. Okay. All right, so we are on September 10th. Now, Andre Luiz in his book, Evolution in Two Worlds, and also Allan Kardec in the book of Genesis, they refer to this as a volatilized constituent elements. So elements start to bond together, but they're still volatile. Things still happening. It's just the beginning. The Earth is not ready. There is no crust. Not yet, nothing like this. September 27th, we see some sort of a planet is going to be formed, but there's a lot of debris on the surface. A lot of different things. It's not a surface. It's not something we could call surface in the way that we use the word today. Okay. October 11th. You see, we are in October, and we're not talking about Earth yet, as we know it. Only here on October 11th, then we're going to start talking about a planet. Crust stability. Just like we had a phase or a stage for solar stability, very same thing for the crust of the Earth. So the movement on the crust kind of calms down, the explosions will calm down, things agglomerated more, and we are going to have a planet very, very, very soon. But before that, the surface of the planet has to cool down. The external layer has to cool down so we can have humans and animals and plants stepping on its surface. So before that, we have to the system itself, right? The Earth had, I'm not going to say Earth yet, but that block of matter had to have its surface, its external layer, cool down. And we are in October, and this cooling down, Allan Kardec refers to this. He breaks it down in several steps. So one thing he says is, it only happened because there was a degree of affinity between all the molecules present at the time. Yeah, until the molecules had affinity, such a thing was not possible. That's why it took a long time. With the cooling of the external layer, new molecular combinations are formed, forming different substances, viscous substances, like a gelatin, and he calls gelatinous mass, because it's still a mass, but it's, resembles a gelatin. There's then condensation of all this matter, and then something is going to be more. Condensation means we're getting to a stage where things are going to be a little more solid, and that's where life starts with the protoplasms, and that would be the very next step on November 8th. November 8th, right? That's when we can consider talking about life on the planet. The first unicellular structures underwater are born. I'm not going to say born because it might sound wrong, but formed. Okay, so you see from October 8th, that we're more than 3/4 of the way from the Big Bang to the present time, present moment. All right, it continues. It doesn't stop here. So let's go. Now it's getting better. Right? December 16. December 16 is just a few days ago, right? In our analogy here. That's when we see the first creatures living under the water. First, you see November 8 is unicellular cells, isolated cells. December 16 is actually living creatures, okay? December 24th, 1 week ago, last week, dinosaurs. And we have this idea that dinosaurs 65 million years ago, oh my God, this is so, so many million years ago. Well, depends on how you look at it. right? If you look at the absolute number, maybe. Under this perspective, it changes a little bit. Okay? They're not so old as we think, or maybe it wasn't that long time ago. December 30th. December 30th was yesterday at 10 a.m. Mammals and cetaceans. So they are welcome into the planet. Okay. December 31st, today at 6:37 p.m. That's like 5 hours ago, 5 or 6 hours ago. That's what I call the evolutionary fork, which is the famous thing about apes versus humans. We're going to go back to this when we talk about the kingdoms, but that would be the evolutionary fork when apes and humans take different paths coming from the same evolutionary point. And that's only 5 or 6 hours ago, right? December 31st at 9:40 p.m. That was 3 hours ago, even less. Homo erectus. That's us, right? Well, I mean, it's close to us. December 31st at 11:58 and 58 seconds. That's almost, it just happened almost. That's what we call the exiles of Capella. We're going to have a special program about this, which is, it has to do with transmigration of spirits into the earth. We're not doing this today. We're just mentioning because it will be something really important as we go along. December 31st, 11:59:35. That was 25 seconds ago. First civilizations. Okay, what is first civilizations? It's when tribes, isolated tribes, here and there, they start to move and migrating because they're looking for water and food, and they come to know other people and other tribes. They unite. They start to unite. Oh, you're here. Yeah, I'm here. Oh, let's get together. And so that's what we call first civilizations. Okay, and it's just, so first civilization 25 seconds ago. That's brand new almost. 5 seconds ago. Ancient Greece, with all its, pompous philosophy, science, culture, at the top of its game at the time. That's 5 minutes ago. That's when we start asking things. We question everything. That's the idea behind the philosophy. I want to know everything. That's when we look up at the skies and say, what are these things? I want to know about it. You cut yourself. A blood liquid comes out and you say, well, what's in there? I want to know about this. That's when all these questions that one day are going to become different branches of science or academic science, they start right here, 5 seconds ago. Before that, we had no idea whatsoever what to even ask. 4 seconds ago, Jesus of Nazareth. That's an interesting thing. We, especially us Spiritists, myself included, okay, we very much say something like this. Jesus came 2,000 years ago. He taught us this, and we haven't learned yet. And we're still struggling with this. And it's been 2,000 years. Okay, so we are, when I say to you, or when you say to me, 2,000 years, we are working on the absolute number. Now, under this perspective, we just miss him. He just passed. And I just looked and he's gone. Just like that. 4 seconds. Think about this. When you were in school, right, and let's say your algebra teacher walked into the class and started teaching algebra, it took a long time to learn it. It didn't take 4 seconds. It took days, weeks, years, and some people haven't got that yet because they simply don't have affinity with the thing. So time is needed for us to mature knowledge. So when we say Jesus just left the message 4 seconds ago, oh, okay, let me see what this message is. By the time I get conscious about it, well, let me look for what he said. Let's see, what did he do? That's already 2 hours. Hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say. So we blame ourselves in a way because he brought this message so long ago and we haven't got it yet. well, it's so long ago. If you think about the absolute number, if you put things on a different perspective, like we're showing here, it isn't so bad. We're struggling, yes, but we will get there. Okay. One important thing that I want to catch your attention here is this. On December 31st, so today, 5 or 6 hours ago, the evolutionary fork, which is where this huge question, which actually, that's how we started the whole program here on our program number 1. How is this thing with monkeys and apes versus humans and all of that? So there was a time, and Emmanuel is going to explain this, that we're going to come back to this later on, not today, a few weeks ahead. But we will come back to this and explain how things happen. We're going to touch this in details when we study the kingdoms. Okay, so this is a very interesting perspective. At least I think it is. For me, it becomes more than interesting. Personally, it seems fascinating for me. And I just love the idea of being able to understand in a way that, the explanation, that explanation to me makes more sense than billion years ago, million years ago, thousands of years ago, because it's hard to grasp the idea. So one thing calls the attention here, which is November 8th. That's when life starts in the planet, and that deserves further investigation. We need to look into this. This is where the vital principle comes in place, the vital principle that we studied last week. Okay, that's the connection between that and what we're seeing here today. So we need to explore a little bit on this subject for life on Earth. How did it start? Well, there are several different theories trying to explain the origin of life. Science has so many different theories. Some are more accepted, some are less. There's people who do not agree at all with some, and they agree, 100% with another one. Anyhow, all these theories of the origin of life, they can be grouped into 3 words. Okay, all of them, but we can resume all of them into 3 theories. The first one is called cosmogony, or also from the Greek panspermia. This is the idea that life in the planet was brought in from outside. It came from the outer space somehow. Life was brought in through bacteria with the DNA, a complete setup, and it landed here on Earth. That's called cosmogony. There's a lot of people who share this view. Of course, we got to respect. And it's an idea out there, okay? It's one of the 3 main groups of theories of origin of life. Second group, it's called abiogenesis, also known in popular words as spontaneous generation. We've all heard about spontaneous generation and all of that. What is behind it? The main central idea is living creators arise from non-living matter. That's what the theory is about. So you have inorganic matter, and then at a certain point, we have organic matter coming from the inorganic matter. That's the theory, abiogenesis. And the third theory is called biogenesis. The second theory, abiogenesis, A means negation of, right? So negation of biogenesis. So biogenesis is exactly the contrary, in which all living things came only from living things. So biogenesis, the central idea is you cannot have a living thing coming from a non-living thing. That's the general idea. Well, okay, so we look at these 3, and where do we Spiritists stand? Where do we stand when we look at this? There is one theory, which is the theory that aligns mostly with Spiritism, which came in the 1930s, between 30 and 35, from a Russian scientist called Alexander Oparin. And he spent most of his life working on this. He was fascinated by the idea of finding the origin of life on the planet. He wasn't able to do much, also because we didn't have a lot of resources that we have today. So, of course, today it's a lot easier to work on the subject. But he was one of the, we could call him a brave man. He decided to go with, everything. He put all his effort, all his life in trying to find an answer. So he ran experiments of all types and sorts. Anyhow, after all these decades that he spent, he died in the 80s, 1982, I believe. So he put a theory together, which is actually a combination of abiogenesis and biogenesis. So this is what he states. Everything starts from, if you don't have life in the planet, and you're going to explain how life came about, then you only had inorganic matter. And what he states is chemical reactions triggered by electrical discharges from those storms. These chemical reactions combined with solar radiations created new molecular structures. They are called today amino acids. So that was the very, very, very beginning, the very early days of life on the planet. But after this, all living beings come from the original living beings, from the first on the surface. So it's actually a combination of things. It's abiogenesis for the formation of the first form of life. And from then on, it's biogenesis, meaning living beings come from living beings through reproduction. And that's the idea of evolution. That's what Darwin came with his theory about. So Oparin's theory is the most accepted theory to this day in the scientific community. It had some adjustments throughout the years, but nothing that compromises the central idea. It had some minor things because we found more stuff. Technology got better. We were able to gather more information on the subject. So we had to make slight adjustments, but nothing that compromises what you see here on the screen. Abiogenesis in the beginning and biogenesis from here then. That's Oparin's theory. His theory was very interesting, and what he wanted to do, his goal in life while he was studying all of that, was to assemble a laboratory, and simulate 100% of the conditions that we had in the early days of the formation of the planet, to see if he could generate life with storms and temperature variations, everything that supposedly the Earth had to go through to allow for life. And he wanted to do this in a lab. He wasn't able to because, of course, it requires time, resources, different elements have to come in place together. And he wasn't able to. But in 1952, one guy decided to do, and he did it. Stanley Miller, 1952. He said, I'm going to buy a house. And he did. He bought a house. And I'm going to transform this house. I'm going to shut down the house all around. And this house is going to simulate the early days of Earth, the conditions, temperature, everything that happened. Explosions, rays, solar incidents, all of that. And he did it. And his goal, which was actually Oparin's goal, was to see under those conditions, can we generate life? Can we do something? And very interestingly, he was able to generate organic molecules, amino acids. He was able to. The only thing is, these amino acids would live for a very, very, very short time. Boom, they would just die, disappear. They would go back to inorganic matter. That's becoming more interesting because I learned last week there's something called vital principle. So the vital principle makes it happen and sustains it. You see, when he did the experiment with supposedly all the conditions, there's something that's being overlooked, which is the vital principle. That's why they were able to create these molecules, but they can't sustain life. They can life doesn't go anywhere. These molecules, they just die, and everything becomes inert, you know, in general. That's very interesting. Anyhow, Oparin's theory is, if you go back to the book of Genesis, Allan Kardec's Genesis, of course, that was way, way, way before Oparin's theory, but you can see that Allan Kardec's idea, of course, with the concourse of the spirits, goes into that direction. There's got to be something that makes life start in the very beginning with the interference of the vital principle, right? And from then on, there's evolution. Actually, Oparin, for the part of the biogenesis in his theory, meaning living beings come from living beings and there's evolution and all, he shared the same ideas of Darwin. He was actually an avid supporter of Darwin, and so he believed in survival of the fittest, struggle for existence, the law of the jungle, natural selection, all of that. But to Darwin's theory, he had one thing that was important, how it all began. Because Darwin wasn't concerned about the origin of life. He was concerned about evolution of species. So, very interesting to say, he also, on his work, Oparin mentions at one point, he mentions that there is evolution of matter somehow. And that is really troublesome for us because matter is matter. We were very clear about this in the last 2 meetings that we had here. Spiritism is about evolution of the intelligent principle, not matter. Matter is inert. It doesn't get better or worse. Matter is manipulated by the intelligent principle. Spiritism studies evolution of the intelligent principle. Okay, guys, so I wanted to thank you for your participation. Bruna and Edimar, they're with us here now live. So thank you very much for your participation. As always, we invite you guys to go to our Spiritist trivia for the week. So you can get there over here, evolution.spirittrivia.com. Okay, it's been activated. So if you go there right now, you can also, if you're on the computer, you can also use the QR code on the top left of your screen. So go in, cast your answer, and we'll discuss the answers next week. As always, go to KardecRadio.com. And we have so many interesting programs. Participate with us. If you have questions and comments, just fill out the forms. We'll get them. We will answer to you. We will get back to you. And we will continue next week. Okay, so thank you very much for your participation and stay with us, Kardec Radio. Thank you so much.